Shin Godzilla.
Oh man, it's time. It's that time. Oh, it's time. X Plus Large Monster Series Shin Godzilla will be standing over 25 centimeters tall. Here's a closer look at that so I can prove my words. And here's how tall he is in inches. Slightly over 10 inches tall. Shokugan, movie, king, marmot, king, sham. Sega! X Plus Deform Reel, Kid Robot Mystery Mini Shin, HG, Finger Puppets. And just look at this giant cardboard box with the black printing on it, just like the Defo Reels. This is something that I love coming out of X Plus. I love it so much. I wish more figures did this. I understand why not everyone does, but it just gives that garage kit vibe. This figure was part of the second batch release, which was January 2017. Its official measurements in inches is 10.125 inches, while in centimeters it is 25.71. Unfortunately, the sculptor is unknown, but we do know for a fact that this lovely gentleman was actually sculpted by hand. No CGI information was used at all. I got all of that official information from KaijuBattle.net and John Stanowski. My guy, I do so apologize if I mispronounced your last name. Anyway, let's get to it. There is quite a lot of ground to cover with this gentleman, so let's start from the bottom, I guess. Paint and detail-wise, you're gonna hear this a lot, but this is simply fantastic. All of the extra nails on Shin Godzilla's feet will be painted. The cool, dried lava look of the skin is very apparent here. You're only really seeing the red vinyl peeking through the black paint in certain areas, and I can confirm that's how this figure was made. Red vinyl, black paint. Not bad. It seems the paint on these do so vary, although they all really do follow the same make and model. But for the most part, as we move into the thighs over here, I think it's rather beautifully communicated. Beautifully communicated in such a way that I wish other companies would have tackled it this way. Up next is the thigh and crotchal area, and as you can see, there is a lot more red peeking out as we get over here. This side in particular is going to see a lot, like a lot. All of this red is nicely complemented by a much less out and in-your-face look of the thigh on the back portion. It's just over here, yeah, there's a lot going on. And I only really would have been upset with that if the other thigh wasn't rocking the same amount. As from the innermost portion to the front all the way to the other side, it is just going to be out on full display. I do feel this general area over here could have used a little bit more black, but when looking at it from the front, it seems to balance itself out rather well. The crotchal area moving into the waist, hips, and chest, the red is going to be peeking out a little bit more gradually and not as wow, bam, in your face as the thighs. And that's beautifully going to carry over to the side of the torso over here, where that dried lava skin look is going to be very apparent. I mean, damn, that looks friggin' good. Woohoo! Now, just to give you a better look at the chest, I am going to have to go handheld mode here with the figure, but vafangul. That is... whoa, jeez, crow. The intricate details, the look of the skin kind of just coiling together, trying to hold Shin Godzilla together in one piece. This is magnificent. I love what X Plus did here. This is the standard, honestly. And, you know, it's kind of a dumb standard to have because this figure was how much at release? I don't even remember. Wasn't under $100 though. But man, I wish more Shin Godzilla figures would have just implemented this style. Red vinyl figure, black paint all over it. Because the look and style really does prove to be just singularly definitive. I do, however, feel Shin's arm over here could have used a little bit more black paint. It's just feeling a bit uneven. Although when looking at certain screenshots from the movie, this arm did appear to be glowing red a bit more than the other one. Although I'm not going to be the one arguing screen accuracy here because, again, I've seen pictures of these. They all seem to differ in some area or another. It's very much possible that mine just didn't get enough paint on the arm. The other arm, I feel, communicates this a lot better. Again, you're going to see more of that red peeking through. Some of it actually kind of looks like red paint as opposed to red vinyl and black paint. Just to give you a better look of how the arm looks on the underside, since this thing is not posable. God damn it. And then there's this one, and you know, I really can't well, I can complain, I did spend the money, but it's not to a point where I feel this is point taking off worthy. Moving into the neck, we are going to get a stunning display of detail and color. Really do wish that there was a bit more black on some areas to kind of hide the red on the neck. Just a little bit more, as the red vinyl mixing in with a light coat of black paint almost makes it come off like a little dry. But the detailing alone simply makes up for all of that, as you get an eyeful of everything here. And I can at least say that it is very consistent between the two sides. Both sides are going to see a copious amounts of red moving into the chest over here, with Shin Godzilla's sternum poking out the way it is. But the red at the base over here, it's just, it's almost hard to look at because, god damn, this guy really is held together by bubblegum and thumbtacks. And I just really love how it all collects right in this general area. Moving to the opposite side of the neck, a little bit less red over here. This is kind of what I was looking for on the other side in this general area, but the gill area is entirely outfitted with beautiful black paint, red vinyl, beautiful detail, the whole 9 yards. And now I guess we can move on to the face. First up, all of these teeth are going to be individually sculpted, individually painted. They're a bit rounded off, but I mean, look at how tiny they are compared to my fingernail. These are small things to be doing. And as long as they're not painted up like the SH Monster Arts release, which, depending on your luck, were either not painted, half painted, or a glorious amalgamation of both. The lower jaw is all wrinkly and ridgy. The top of the head is just, it looks like charcoal briquettes. And the eye is so tiny and simple, all white, black pupil. I mean, I could look at this for hours and pinpoint a new detail that I've likely missed over the years of owning this thing, which is almost 10 years now, fuck my life. The front-on shot of the figure, you're really not going to see the eyes too much. You do see a little bit of this eye poking out over here, but the lower point to which you look at this thing is where you see the eyes peering down, and to this day, that's one of my favorite little traits of Shin Godzilla as a creature and as a film overall. It's also one of the reasons why I love Daimajin so much. You can actually see the eyes peering down. Now granted, you could see Godzilla's eyes pretty easily in other films, but paired with this design, it's just a bit on the scary side, and I enjoy that. From here, you can also see Shin Godzilla's nose, a bit of his lips going on here, and the front row of teeth, so jagged and uneven, I love it. I mean, come on, man. That is simply beautiful. Horrifying, but beautiful. There's a few strands of red paint that feel a little too bright for their britches, but for the most part, no complaints. And I love how the teeth just bunch up at the corner of his jaw over here. I love how they overlap. I love how messily, not painted, but sculpted into his head they are. That pretty much wraps up the entirety of the front side of the figure. I mean, I think I've said all I needed to say. And now for a little Shinrobjira lore. Why did I praise DHL back in the day and despise FedEx? You older viewers will know. Some of you newer viewers, get ready for the origin story. Back in the day, I could think of no better version of Godzilla to be my first X Plus release than Shin Godzilla. So of course I ordered this, and upon getting it, yep, dorsal fin broken. Want to know the worst part? The original shipping box had a hole in it, and as you saw when I was turning that box around, there were little slits where the thingies were. I can only imagine that that tiny piece slid out of the box, which was not in the best shape, the shipping box, not this box, and it was probably swept out of a FedEx truck, and I had a field day trying to get a fixed version of this. I turned my apartment upside down, the box inside out mostly, and couldn't find it. I actually had a guest that night, and I didn't let them leave until I found the piece, and the piece, nope. So I didn't use FedEx for a long time. And this still irks me to this very day. It's a tiny piece, but it's just so noticeable. But now that utter annoyance has been relived, let's take a look at these dorsal fins, which I personally think look friggin' great. For the most part. We're going to have jet black dorsal fins with red roots and cores of the dorsal fins just slowly creeping up, really giving light to that living nuclear reactor vibe that Shin Godzilla gives off. The paint and detail are on display, something ferocious back here, and save for, this being broken and pissing me off, I love looking at every angle of this figure because it is just simply beautiful. And it really only gets better the closer you look at things over here. I mean, I can't. Like, I could easily make this review an hour plus long, just going through every little ridge and rivet and wrinkle. But I'm not going to do that unless I get that X Plus gigantic Shin Godzilla, which I never will. I'm too broke.
Like, if you're a broke boy, just say so.
Now, it did allude to being slightly disappointed with some of the dorsal fins over here, and it'll be a bit of this one and a bit of that one. It does feel just a bit lackluster for something as prestigious as X Plus, and I feel the black paint could have been applied in a much better fashion that brings balance to everything going on here, especially when you see this black gloop over here on this dorsal fin. God. I'm allowed to pick it apart. It's a $100+ thingamabob. But thankfully, that little there splooch was situated behind this tinier dorsal fin over there, so you kinda can't really see it. But since I know it's there, I know it's there. But did you notice it was there? Maybe. Now let's turn the figure to the side and get a glimpse at his back. This friggin' wrinkly lasagna disaster that Shin Godzilla calls a back remains one of my favorite details about Shin Godzilla, both in this figure right here and in the design overall. It's just one gigantic fuck-off heat vent for a back. And I do like how the paint was applied to some of the areas back here because it allows you to see all those raised details that the paintbrush caught. I mean, seriously, look at this. SH Monster Art's friggin' wishes, dog. But anyway, moving on a bit lower, more detailing, more paint to see, more dorsal fins to see, of course. And the dorsal fins do get a tiny bit spottier at their center as we get closer to the tail, but nothing to a point where I would say I'm upset with them, I think. Same could be said overall for the opposing side, although now that I'm looking closely at it, there are a few other dorsal fins I'm not crazy about, but I gotta put the nitpicking aside, although that dorsal fin does look shit. Although, since from a design standpoint, Shin Godzilla feels and looks so cobbled together, an uneven paint job, ratio to skin to glowing red inner skin, could actually just be passed off as he's cobbled together an amalgamation of multiple beings, a not fully completed lasagna dish. But that's just a bit too much cope for me, and I cope quite a bit. Moving on to the top of the tail, because we are going to look at the sides and undersides of the tail separately. Man, I really gotta get myself into some weird positions just to get these shots. I mean, just look at me. But we're going to see more of that heat vent looking detail between all of the spikes over here. Deep reds, and the reds are all the same color, the same shade, unlike Sham. Or at least my copy of it. There, you happy? But man, oh man, I love that so much. It looks so friggin' good. And the detailing on these tiny little friggin' spikes, dude. Jeez, crow. They do get a bit smoother gradually as we get into the longer spikes, but not by much. In fact, I just love the distinction of small, smaller, 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 gradual growing, gradual growing, gradual. Yeah, if you weren't expecting me to gush about this design, my name is Shin Robjira. Shin Godzilla is still my favorite Godzilla movie of all time. And Shin Godzilla's design is my favorite Godzilla design of all time. This is Gushers, the video. Oh, but it's so nice looking, man. Jesus, there is no God. Golly, the detail on display, the paint. But oh man, it's only going to get better, because now we can talk about the tip of Shin Godzilla's tail. Least interesting side first, though. I love the gloss that was applied over here, giving that beautiful wet look to it. I love that we can see, like, skeletal remains or whatever have you going on over here. And I love the little painted on detail of parts of the skin just kind of still remaining over here, as it kind of helps give off the look that this part of Godzilla isn't really supposed to be there, and almost like there are two beings existing within this Godzilla and one trying to get out, or at least be able to be seen. Again, the detailing here, the paint work, everything that is on display here is simply fantastic, and that bursting comment that I made just feels all the more, I don't want to say correct, but represented, especially over here where it really does look like this tip is bursting from the tip of Shin Godzilla's tail. And I love that little detail so much. Now, as you can hopefully see, we can see a bit of the mouth forming over here. We've got an eye socket with an eye right here. Shin Godzilla having a face at the tip of his tail was a hotly debated and talked about thing when this movie was coming out. And I really do love that it was properly represented here on the X Plus figure, as most of the movie Monster series releases didn't seemingly have the face. There was the Final Climax King series figure, which not only gave it a face, but opened the mouth up, something crazy. I just remember being so oddly fixated on this. This was such an interesting topic to theorize about. And yes, there were a lot of people saying, no, it just looks like a face, but once something like this comes out and you can see it for your own two eyes, yeah, that's a friggin' face. And then, you know, of course, as more, like, artwork came out and such, that was just all the confirmation us face believers needed. I get why people aren't exactly a fan of this, but it just adds to the talkability of this whole thing. And again, I simply love how it's painted, how it's detailed, what it's painted and detailed with, and just utterly perfection. As for the underside of the tail, we're going to get mostly the same detailing, or we're going to get all of that red in between the major ridges of Shin Godzilla's tail, which is yet another thing I was rather upset to not essentially see recreated on other Shin Godzilla figures. I mean, yes, NECA did bless us with a pretty great paint job for their Shin Godzilla, even though the overall sculpt of that is as I thought. I could count on X Plus, and I was correct. For once. Yeah, casting this thing in red vinyl and then painting the black on was probably the best thing they could have done for Shin Godzilla. And again, I really hope it's something that happens a bit further on into the future. And here's a bonus for all of you, the underside of Shin Godzilla's feet and heels. Nice. Now overall, I think this is truly a beautiful figure. Paint, detail, sculpt work. It's killing me that I don't know who the sculptor is. Could not find that information, and apparently it's not Yuji Sakai. Not yet. There are a few areas on the figure that I'm not crazy about. Some of the dorsal fins, the right arm and such. But to discredit the entirety of the release for just that and a few things over here doesn't feel wholly fair. But at the same time, I paid $125 before shipping? Maybe more, maybe less. And I did feel pretty let down with the broken dorsal fin, but that's not the fault of X Plus. That was the fault of New Jersey FedEx in that specific area, jerks. So I'm going to give it a solid star in terms of detailing. There's no articulation. I mean, the arms do move a tiny bit, but that's not intended. Paint-wise, despite the tinier issues that I have, I am going to give it a solid star. The only thing left to really talk about are the seams. Now, from an angle, you really can't see the seam for the tail until you shift the figure a bit forward. And considering how you have to apply the tail yourself right out the box, I can forgive that with a thumbs up, I guess. The seams for the arms are beautifully hidden. I mean, I can't even tell sometimes. It's like, you know, they're a separate piece because you can see it wiggle a bit over there. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare anybody. See? This arm moves a little bit. Okay, I promise I'm not going to do it anymore. But again, the seams are properly hidden. And since this is the standard version that didn't come with the purple paint applied and the alternate head with the unhinged jaw, there is no seam at the head, although I'm told they are pretty beautifully hidden. Really, the only seams that I can actively grade down are the thighs, because Jesus tap dancing Magnolia. That's just... whew. Yeah, I feel like the skin should have lipped over the legs a little bit more. At least from this part over here to about over here where the thighs meet crotchal area. Because no matter the side, the seams are just so very friggin' obvious, and this bothers me even more because this leg moves a tiny bit. So I can at least give half a thumbs down for the seams around the legs, as the seams around the arms and the tail are just fine. Hell, even the seam over here is just fine. I didn't even notice there was a seam there when I first got this thing. Beautiful. I would say I highly recommend this to anybody looking for one, but at aftermarket with X Plus figures, no thank you. None. Zero. Zilch. And that, friends and neighbors, is that. Hopefully this review wasn't too long for all of you, and hopefully you enjoyed me gushing over an X Plus figure. The only proper X Plus figure I have outside of the Defa Reels. Maybe one day I'll get another one. I mean, if they ever release another 25 centimeter Toho Large Monster Series Shin Godzilla, yeah, that might be the one that I take the bullet on. I mean, it was almost the Cybot in Godzilla Ultima at one point, but I've been Shin Jira. Do so hope you all enjoyed. Check out my social media, Patreon, $1 a month, access to everything. And when next we meet, more Transformers, Godzilla 2014-a-thon. Hopefully, City of Destruction, first review. Let's go!